in the same feed. So we're continuing on from where we left off, guys. I went to the old way of doing it because for some reason OBS does not like 480p, so I can't run it that way. So I will have to figure out something. But anyways, let me get back to my live dash so I can make sure that you guys have followed us over. So anyways, go to the live chat, guys. Let me just make sure that you guys can hear us properly. We're going to do a quick sound check and then continue from where we left off. Oh, that sounds much better, Tony says. Yay. So good. We'll continue on. Kyle, so continue on where we had left off about your journey there.
What was the last thing that you heard?
Hi, I'm Kyle. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, you had been talking about you growing up in a small town.
And right, and the church didn't have a lot of resources, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the church that I grew up at was a small rural town out in the middle of nowhere in East Texas, deep East Texas. So you can already kind of, I guess, imagine what that's like if you've ever lived in the South or if you've ever met anybody that lived in the South and know what kind of culture that is. The memes are more or less correct. Typically people are not all that educated, so
a little backwards.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It's predominantly Republicans, and not that there's anything wrong with being a Republican, but it's your typical come and take it. We need more prayer in schools.
Well, we know Tommy Hall. He's from Texas, so he falls in that kind of category.
Well, yeah.
So we definitely know the type. We know that the indoctrination in the South is pretty prevalent. I mean, in fact, literally, I just was watching a video by Aaron Ra where he had to go in and explain to a bunch of teachers why their understanding of evolutionary theory was complete crap.
Mm-hmm.
It was embarrassing. By the way, I've got the top comment on that video. So if you know which video I'm talking about, vote it up because I've already got 70 likes or something like that. Yay. But
yeah, so that's pretty much my experience with that congregation. And, they were nice. They were well-meaning people, but, just confused on some things. They, had gotten a hold of this, really conservative material from this organization called Apologetics Press, and they had some other resources from some other different organizations as well, with a young Earth bent. They never really got too much into the. I didn't even know who Ken Ham or Kent Hovind was until a few years ago. So I didn't really heard of them, or I wasn't familiar with their material, but that's pretty much where I was for the majority of my life up until I want to say 3 or 4 years ago when I started changing my opinion on things.
Has it been that recent? So your journey, you were involved in it for 20 years, and it was only recently, 3 or 4 years ago, where you kind of started to take a second glance at it and go, maybe what they're telling about the science is not quite correct.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of that had to do with my education, and some of that had to do with some of the outside reading that I did, and some of the other resources that I interacted with. So I never really had a friend or a mentor or somebody that I went to with these issues. I was just kind of independent study stuff that I just kind of figured out over, let's say a year. I guess it took me about a year to go from a strict young Earth creationist position to, I guess, that sort of moved to the universe is definitely as old as, the geologists and the cosmologists all say it is.
Now, was it just the churches, or was it also in your schools as well? I mean, did they actually teach you that man was contemporary with dinosaurs, that man walked with dinosaurs?
No, not in school.
Okay, because they have public, or excuse me, private schools that do teach those things.
No, I went to a public school.
Okay.
And it was just your average stuff. They didn't really get too much into evolution or cosmic expansion or anything like that until you got to, I guess, like junior high or high school. But they went over it. They went over it, and there was really no big fuss about it. It was this is chapter 15 in the if you've ever watched good grief, that one interview with what's his name, Miller, the guy who did the Dragonfly book.
Oh, Ken Miller.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the book we used, and as far as I remember, it was a good book. But they went over all the stuff, and we went over it, and I think it was like 3 or 4 chapters that they spent on evolution, and then we moved on to, I think, human anatomy or something. But no.
So they did their job. I mean, because the video I just got done watching with Aaron Raw, these educators were clearly not willing to teach the science correctly, and not only that, they didn't understand it. Yeah,
and and interestingly enough, if you've seen the Dover versus Kitzmiller,
oh yes, quite familiar with that
documentary, it was the teachers that actually came out against the parents. They defended the original curriculum and said, no, this is correct. What you guys are pushing is basically, as one guy put it, creationism dressed up in a sheep suit.
Mm-hmm.
They actually followed the paper trail that led to ID from creationism. And that's really what.
Oh, absolutely. The judge even was appalled at the behavior of the school board and some of the people testimonies. He said that he wasn't surprised that some of the he would have actually charged him with perjury in some cases. He was not impressed by them at all. But when you found that out, was this after you've already left human creationism, and did you look in like retrospect and go, man, I'm glad I did, start to leave that, because now I can look at this and go, yes, I understand why the judge sided the way they did. I can understand that ID is creationism dressed up. It's this lipstick with a new, thing of assuming it's a pig with a new thing of lipstick on.
Yeah, I think I watched that documentary about a year ago. I had heard of the Dover incident. I'm familiar with some of Jeannie Scott's talks, and Eugenie Scott. And she goes over some of that stuff. She's got one, I think it was on YouTube, called the Decline of Young Earth Creationism. I think it was a good talk, and she goes over the Dover incident. But yeah, no, this was after I had already made the transition, and people who are what is this? Sorry, that's mine. Antivirus thing popping up, giving me updates. People who are intelligent design proponents try to distance themselves from young Earth creationism about as much as they can for obvious reasons, I would imagine. I've never really asked them. I don't really have any friends who are ID theorists, but no, they most of them. If you're familiar with Michael Behe's stuff, he's one of the leading proponents of ID theory, and he's okay with evolution.
Yeah, he accepts evolution. That type of ID that Behe and I think even Dembski promotes is that, they look at it and say, okay, yes, we do realize that the Earth is old. We do realize evolution does happen. We realize that common sense does happen. they want to explain it by invoking some kind of intelligence as the cause. And I at least understand that a little bit. I don't agree with it, but I at least a little bit understand it. But then on the other side, you have people that say, you know what, evolution is completely wrong, and ID is the only true science. And that's when I go, yeah, that's just complete nonsense.
There are a couple of different positions that these guys can hold, but all of it, it's all God of the gaps and
Sure.
Arguments from ignorance and arguments from incredulity. I'm just not a fan of it.
Now, when you were a young creationist, did you? I mean, it sounds weird asking, but did you know those kind of terms? Did you know what the fallacies were? Had you taken a course in contemporary rhetoric or fallacious reasoning, or was it this? If somebody said, "Okay, well, I'm going to hold to claim X until you can disprove it," right? Which is argument from ignorance, or they say, "You know what? You can't explain that, ergo God." Did you realize that those were kind of fallacies?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I had an advanced layman's understanding of logical fallacies and how that kind of stuff worked. I'd never really taken a logic course, but you run across some of that stuff when you enter into this territory normally, especially if you actually engage with people in online forums or public forums even. So it's just kind of something that you run across, but no, I didn't really have an in-depth understanding of those sorts of concepts.
Yeah, and I had asked you earlier, so I'm gonna ask you now because you said it's okay to talk about. Now, your family, you had mentioned that your dad was kind of cool with it, but your mom wasn't, or the other way around?
Yeah, no, that's right. When I don't remember, I never came out, quote unquote. Just you talk with your parents about stuff, you talk with your family about stuff, and somebody said something about something one day, and I don't remember how the conversation got started, but I ended up telling them no, I don't believe that doesn't make any sense at all, and here's a handful of reasons why. And my mother was kind of pretty hesitant to accept any of that stuff, because we all went to the same church and we all listened to the same kind of stuff. And
do they still go to the same church?
No, they go to a very progressive church off of Lake Conroe now, and it's a wonderful place, and the people there are very inviting. It's a completely different atmosphere. And I talked to my parents about this maybe, I don't know, a few months ago. It's like we still feel like we're kind of deconditioning ourselves to the sort of environment that we were in for a long time. You don't really, at least we didn't. Well, I did probably earlier than they did. Simply because of the sorts of questions I was asking. But, you don't really think about how, I don't want to say indoctrinating, but how impactful a negative church environment can be on your thought processes, on your thought processes and on your well-being, until you actually get out of it and move over into a different environment that is more inviting and not only progressive, but just the fact that the people were more, I guess, accepting, that they actually allowed a variety of viewpoints and positions on various things. This was actually the first church that I had been to that actually had a written out mission and statement of faith and core beliefs. And
now, when you say mission of faith statement, did you actually sign something like a mission of? Because there is something called a statement of faith or a mission statement of faith, where
like an official confession, like the Westminster Confession of Faith.
I got you. Okay,
It wasn't anything like that. It was this is who we are. This is what we want to do with our church and with our community, and this is kind of the goal that we're driving at. These are the things that we believe, and it was only like 4 or 5 bullet points, and it's basically the four or five central most tenets of Christianity. That nothing like we affirm that the earth is 6,000, nothing like that. And then that was about it. It was.
Well, it's kind of good that you didn't have so much pushback that other young Earth creationists have had when they realized that young Earth creation is wrong. I mean, Wayne here got banned from like forums across the board. He was real big into young creationism. He was friends with Ken Hovind. I mean, they were chum buddies.
Oh wow!
Yeah. He was like going to his house, and I mean, they were really like.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, but as soon as he denounced young Earth creationism across the board, they're like labeling him a heretic, and then it's so funny because it'd be like, oh well, it's not really a salvational issue, but you're going to hell. It's like,
yeah,
how's that supposed to work?
Because some of those guys, it is, and it's intense. I never got any of that. But my dad was open to it, and he was like, "Oh, well, that kind of makes sense. I don't really have any issues with it." He just, my parents don't really think about this stuff a whole lot because it's not what they're interested in. They don't care about theology. They don't.
It's not a big deal to them then.
Yeah. It really wasn't that big of a deal. They weren't really married to it. But now, since they've been going to this other community, they're probably far more open to it as they become more open to other, points of doctrine that we once considered were settled issues, which, turns out to not be the case depending on which church you go to. My grandfather is, he's an old preacher for way back, elder in the church for several years. Dude has a massive, massive library. He's got the complete works of Josephus. He's got pretty much multiple commentaries on every single book of the Bible. He's got a lot of religious books, and he's completely open to it. He's not a young Earth creationist. And he and I have sort of, we talk about stuff like this all the time. And, for a long time he was a young Earth creationist, and he's since recently changed his views on a variety of things. He's sort of done the same thing that I have. He's studied his way out of these different doctrines that don't really make sense in light of, various things, science, in light of scripture, in light of, what have you. So, no, I wasn't banned from anything. I didn't have that experience. My experience was pretty, how do I put it? Pleasant, I guess.
It's funny that when people go through this process, and it is a deconversion. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's a deconversion process, and sometimes it's harsh. Sometimes it's not so bad. In your case, it doesn't sound like it was that bad, but there is a sense of loss sometimes. And did you find yourself like trying to latch on to something else? Like, okay, well, I'm not going to believe this kind of weird batshit stuff, but I'm going to kind of move into this other batshit stuff because I've seen that happen actually a few times. Normally,
I didn't have anything like that. It was, I went from a young Earth view, or I'd say over the period of maybe a year, maybe less, to going from a strict young Earth view to a more open view on what Genesis 1-3 has to say about evolution and the age of the Earth. And it wasn't, at least for me, it wasn't one small, like, okay, well, I'm now an older creationist. The universe is definitely 14 billion years old, but evolution is a dirty lie from the pit of hell. I never went there. It was, okay, so this collection of beliefs I now reject. I'm just going to be open about everything until I do more study on it. And then over the next, I'd say, year, year or so was really my sort of defining what we can actually say with confidence in light of Genesis 1 through 3, or Genesis, I guess, well, really 1 through 9, because you've got the flood in there at chapter 6, and that sort of is, I don't know, it's usually packaged together with all the stuff that happens in 1 through 3, at least if you look at it as far as exegesis goes, because a lot of the events in the flood hinge on what you do with 1 through 3. So
yeah, it sounds like you took a very methodological exegesis-like approach to rationalization. See, I believe that it's not so much what you believe per se that makes you rational or irrational; it's how you get there. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not irrational if you actually have some pretty fucked up beliefs. Let's be realistic here. I mean, if I would say that, if you think aliens have taken over, the government and there's a bunch of reptilians, I don't care how you got there. You're pretty irrational to me. But if somebody reaches the conclusion like there's a deity, I don't have a problem with that. That's not an irrational position for me. Now, some other people might disagree with that, and I respect that. But to me, it's the journey. It's how did I reach this particular position, and is my line of reasoning sensible? Is it rational? Do I employ both empiricism and rationalism, right? Because I think it's kind of a mixture of both to kind of get to our conclusions. I'm an agnostic, so that's the position I reached, and I think I reached it sensibly. A lot of people don't. They want to put me in either atheist or deist, but or theist. But I don't fit neatly into those categories, right?
yeah, no, I get it. My two best friends, actually, one of them's an agnostic and one of them's an atheist. So these guys have been my best friends since first grade. So it's they went. They each went a certain. It's funny. We sort of ran the spectrum. So theist, agnostic, atheist. I think it's kind of.
Well, like I was saying, I really respect the fact that people will investigate things, and I think it's a sign of intelligence, wisdom, and just the ability to think rationally when people want to evaluate things and say, you know what, do I have a valid position? Do I have the truth? And they're not afraid to do kind of a introspection of themselves and say, could I be wrong on this? Because in the young earth creationist movement, and I have talked to a lot of young earth creationists, I mean, trust me, and I've talked to a lot of PhDs with that are in the young earth creationist thing, like Jeffrey Tompkins and Andrew Snelling, all of them, right? I've engaged with all of them before in written discussions and trying to get them all to come on, right? But I've noticed one thing that's kind of true to all of them: they will not, even for the second, even as a hypothetical, entertain that they could be wrong.
Right. Well, because at least in my experience, what they do is they basically build their entire Christian worldview around a very literalist interpretation of Genesis 1 through 3. And the way they understand it is that, well, if we can't believe the first 3 books of the Bible, then there's no point in believing the rest of it. So it's your typical slippery slope fallacy. But that's exactly what they do, and it's
yeah, I don't think it's all or nothing. I really don't. I mean, I do think most of the Bible is allegorical. I think that not a lot of it was supposed to. Well, I'm not saying about the New Testament, but especially in the Old Testament, was not supposed to be taken literally. Noah's Ark, we know, didn't happen. It just didn't happen.
I mean, and it's all about genre, right? So, I mean, this is stuff that people who work in biblical studies or people who work in Old Testament or ancient Near East have known for like decades now. So, and because that stuff isn't well, I don't want to say mainstream. It's mainstream within academia, but it's not it's not populist crap. So the young Earth stuff it's populist crap. It's not this is not something that you find in academia. So I only know of one young Earth creationist, or who I suspect is a young Earth creationist, who actually works in biblical studies and has a relevant degree and actually contributes to the field and contributes to peer-reviewed journals and stuff, and that's Todd Beale. So I don't know if you're familiar with Todd Beale's work. He's written some great books.
I know Todd Wood. Todd Wood is a young Earth creationist who actually accepts evolution. He writes a blog. He's a PhD in biology, who I have reached out to before, but he didn't want to defend Dr. Tompkins' works, because Dr. Tompkins has made arguments against the human chromosome number 2 fusion. If you're familiar with that situation.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
So Dr. Tompkins, he has written a few things for AIG, which many of us have gotten together, and people that are experts in this have gotten together. I'm a layperson. I totally admit that. Don't take my word for shit when it comes to these biology. But we've gotten together and overwhelmingly have destroyed his arguments, right? And I gave him the benefit of the doubt and said, look, we would love to have you on here. We would give you all the time in the world you want. Just explain to us your argument here, because what you've written is just wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, across the board, wrong, fundamentally wrong. And they won't do it because they won't go on a platform where they don't have control. They'll go into like Ian Juby. They'll go into some other younger creationist type forum, but they won't go into a forum where they're going to be asked the difficult questions.
Yeah, no, I mean they like their echo chambers. That's
yes.
And the easiest way to I guess to handle these guys, at least in my experience, is cite your sources. Where are you getting this from? If you can't cite any peer-reviewed literature, if you aren't even willing to engage with the scientific community at large, then I don't have a reason to take anything you say seriously. So, blogs and
blogs only get you so far, right?
Yeah, blogs.
I'm not against blogs completely, because we have a friend of mine, a great guy in our community, Ruhif. He writes a blog, but he's actually asked to have his stuff published in the DI or in their journal, whatever their journals they call them, right? They refuse to do it, although he's correct. I mean, everybody who's actually read his stuff, who does know about this, go, yeah, Ruhif knows his shit, right?
Yeah.
But they won't engage with him, so.
Right. Well, the Panda's Thumb blog. Do you follow that?
Yes, I like the Panda's Thumb, actually, and I've been meaning to reach out to them, actually, to get him on.
Those guys cite their sources. The people at BioLogos cite their sources.
Love BioLogos.
Love BioLogos too. I love pretty much everybody that's affiliated with them. John Walton, I love John Walton. I've read all his books. Peter Enns, I've read all his books. I subscribe to his podcast. I think Trimper Longman has also done some pieces for BioLogos, but I might be mistaken on that. I want to say he has done. I think he wrote or contributed to a piece with John Walton once, maybe. I know that they both wrote a section in Reading Genesis 1 and 2, an evangelical conversation, which was a pretty good book. It was actually a book over a conference that they had back in 2011 on Genesis 1 and 2. So it was like they had the symposium, and then they wrote this book. It was basically a compilation of the essays and stuff that were presented at that conference. So you've clearly done your research. See, this is what I've said many times. People need to do their due diligence. Information doesn't come, through osmosis by putting a book under your pillow at night. You've got to read.
Can I mic check?
Yeah. Hey, my Xbox. Yes, you.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure you can hear me. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, we can hear you, my friend.
Hello.
And it's funny that you mentioned echo chambers, because I know you don't know much about this community. By the way, Kyle is not a member of the Great Debate community yet. I will give him the link later. He's from my book, so he doesn't know any of you people. Okay. I think he may know Aaron Roth. Maybe.
No, I think he knows me. He just suppresses it.
Yeah, he suppresses it in unrighteousness. Everybody knows Xbox. But, you know, I'm bringing in new people to the community that you guys are not familiar with to try to get a different kind of perspective. But we do have an echo chamber on the other side of the pond, as you can say. And I don't mean like, you know, Britain. I mean like the fundamental evangelical young earth creationist / ideas.
Yeah, the fence. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't allow for any kind of free exchange. They don't allow for any kind of criticism. They don't allow for anybody to go into their room to really have open dialogue, and they use moderation controls to stifle the conversation because they don't want to be exposed for the fact that they really have bad arguments, right? In fact, Xbox is one of the nicest guys you ever meet. He said like 4 words the other day and he got kicked out.
Yeah, it really comes down, if you watch some of my stuff, if you can't handle me disagreeing with you because I'm so agreeable and I don't attack with my disagreements and I'm reasonable about them, if you can't take my disagreements, you can't take anybody's disagreements on.
Yeah. And I mean, we have quite a slice that come into my rooms. I mean, in fact, Xbox is agnostic like I am. Wayne's a theist. Tony is agnostic atheist, I guess would be the best way to describe him, right?
That
Tony?
sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Gary is a Quaker, which is a Christian. So we have a very, you know.
Would you go by what I go by, calling it a Huxleyan agnostic?
You're a Huxleyan agnostic. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I respect Huxleyan, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a very high threshold of a burden of justification. That's all.
I have argument. Yeah, I had to construct arguments behind it.
By the way, did Kyle freeze up, or is that just his camera? Oh, no, he's still there. Oh, I don't want to put him to sleep because I'm enjoying this very much. As people may know, this is like my new series, Recovering from Irrationality, of people that I'm going to be writing in, because my last video just a few minutes ago went to hell because the OBS software. So I kind of like everything that I said about this series went bye-bye. So for those of you guys who don't know what's going on, I am having these people come in just to give us an idea of what happens when people do start thinking for themselves and do start wanting to question what they're being told by either their church or their friends or family, and especially when things are just facts like common descent, like, you know, evolution taking place. These are non-contestable facts. And, you know, Kyle is in the medical profession. He's had to study some of this stuff, and he had to learn that, you know what, maybe what they were telling him wasn't very true. I mean, would that be a safe way to put it, Kyle?
That's what I was actually going to ask. Can
Yeah, go ahead.
Kyle take a minute to describe like his background and things like that, or did he already do that?
He did, but he can kind of go over it again if he doesn't mind. Kyle, do you?
Yeah, no. What do you want to know?
Like, what was your theological background, and maybe how you progressed from there to where you are now?
Well, I guess my theological background, which I didn't really have much. You know, I didn't go to a private school. We didn't have any kind of special programs at my church or anything that really pushed young earth creationism or anything. You know, some of these bigger churches will have people like you know, Answers in Genesis or whoever come in and do talks or do you know, like workshops or anything. We didn't have anything like that. It was I went to a very, very small church in like deep East Texas, so like super conservative, super I mean, nothing against them, but uneducated. So
For sure.
I mean, not only did they not really engage with the scientific aspect of it, they didn't really engage with the I guess with good exegesis, right? Because like I was telling Steve earlier, young earth creationism is not something that you really find in biblical studies.
Right, for sure.
It's not. I mean,
It was actually popped up rather recently of the young earth creation thing.
Right, and I mean to say that it is a pretty unrepresented minority in biblical studies is an understatement. So they just didn't interact with actual scholarship, and it's just something that I just kind of like, oh well, I guess
some people are just they're unreasonable, and I wouldn't call them irrational, but they're okay with it. They don't think they're being unreasonable.
Yeah,
obviously, but they're okay with how things are.
You had mentioned something about, I think it was Eugene Scott. I think you had mentioned her name, wasn't it? That you said that she said that young Earth creationism is kind of waning. Do you think that? I mean, you're involved in it. Do you think the movement of young Earth creationism is actually diminishing, stable, or increasing?
Well, I mean, it's like I said, it's almost unrepresented. It's almost unrepresented in biblical studies, which, in my opinion, if we're going to talk about what anything in the Bible, specifically Genesis 1 through 3, Genesis 6 through 9, whatever it has to say about the age of the earth or evolution or anything like that, that's where you need to go, I think, is biblical studies. People who work in Old Testament, people who work in ancient Near East. These are the guys that you talk to. But, if you move over into disciplines like apologetics or theology, it's different, because while these sorts of people like to claim that they're being quote unquote biblical or anything like that, they're really not. It's primarily driven by personal ideologies, by theology, by stuff that don't have really anything to do with what scholars are actually doing with the Bible, who actually work with the Bible. So
would you think that just like you probably, I actually did go to like a private Baptist school and things, but this was never brought up and questioned. Like, there was never young Earth creation. I don't ever remember really them pushing any kind of agenda like that. But just the way you take, say, Noah's flood, that varies between a lot of different churches and different groups and different theologies.
Yeah.
But you grow up with this certain version of it.
Yeah.
You really never question whether it matches what the Bible is saying or not.
Right.
And I think young Earth creation might have a movement in that same way, is that there's people growing up with it, they're being taught it, and it's not something that they question. It's not something they go back to see if their Bible says it or see if
I agree with that. I think you're right, Xbox. But I do think it is. I think it is diminishing, though.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I mean, I've seen a diminishing of it just over the last 5 years. I mean, did you guys see when like Ken Hovind had his little speech? I mean, nobody showed up anymore. He can't even get booked because people just are not buying into it as much as they used to. There's obviously going to be those people that always wanted to hear to it. I get that, right? But I think that there's more and more people becoming like Kyle that are going, you know what? This is not what comports with reality. And I just cannot any longer maintain this worldview that just goes against every shred of evidence is out there, right?
It becomes untenable once you actually start questioning it and looking into it.
Yeah, at first it was new. It was a new thing. Everyone was like, oh, this is a good way to look at it. And then everyone, when they dissected it, they see the flaws.
I'm going to briefly ask Kyle real quick. I cut him off in the middle. I think we all did at some point. I guess fast forward to, where are you now in your beliefs?
As far as what?
Theology or Christianity, not Christianity. I'm not sure what your position is.
I'm a Christian. I'm about as progressive a Christian as you can get without, I guess, being something else. Which, I mean, I think if we're going to be completely honest, is probably where Jesus was. I mean, look at the kind of stuff he did. I mean, if the Gospels are to be believed, I don't think he would have been a fan of young Earth creationism. You just look at the interactions that he had with the religious groups that were his contemporaries. He didn't like them. They were like a lot of the very vocal religious groups of today. They were very dogmatic. They were very certain in their beliefs, and they weren't going to be challenged. And so
right on. Yeah.
Well, young Earth creationists as a whole don't like to be challenged. I mean, just literally before we went on air, I was talking to somebody, and I can't remember his name, but actually some people in our community do know who he is. They've actually said to me that they've dealt with him before. He had some very, very bad arguments. He was playing pigeon jest like you wouldn't believe. And as soon as I kind of just ripped his argument apart and showed him why he was wrong, guess what he did? He blocked me. Because that's just the part for the course, right? Is basically I can literally predict what's going to happen in any conversation with a young creationist. And then somebody else had messaged me that was watching all this and saw that they blocked me. And he's like, I would like to continue. I'm like, oh, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah,
He
you'll
started
find
going-
this in the community. You'll find people that want to know, like you're talking about the scholarship and what's going on and what's a little bit more reasonable to believe. And then you're going to find the people that just are dogmatic, stuck in their beliefs. It's an ingrained thing.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
they're going to not listen to anything you say. They just want to be here to
but
preach
this guy-
and
hang
to
on
make
one
you look bad. And
Let me finish my train of thought, Xbox. This guy literally went right into presuppositional apologetics, right? And here's the kicker: not only was he a presupper, he was the textbook Psi 10 clone, and I mean verbatim.
that's funny.
And he wasn't understanding any of my answers.
Right.
And I've noticed when you
It
have a
goes off the
conversation,
key cards. It's-
I noticed when you have a conversation with a presupper and you give them something they're not familiar with, then they're calling us evasive or not answering the question. And it's like, I've answered the question quite fully. I've explained my position and why my position is sound. You're not understanding it, but they're so far off script that they can't accept that. I mean, were you like that, Kyle, when you were kind of like defending Eric creationism?
As far as what? As far as saying that someone was invasive, or
We're just being
I mean, how'd you-
closed-minded about other views like that.
How did your argumentation style go when you were defending Earth creationism?
I never really argued it all that much. I mean, I had arguments with different, with a few friends, but it's then.
Well, no, like put it this way: if you were to come across something that challenged young Earth creationism, was your first instinct to dismiss it or find ways that it was wrong instantly, kind of thing, like a knee-jerk type of reaction?
No, I mean, I tried to deal with it as best I could, but just because of the nature of how things work, there were topics that I was unfamiliar with. And,
Right. No,
I would try to be honest and say, I can't really comment on that because I haven't actually looked into it. So,
So you weren't like you weren't.
This is actually what I was going to lead into with that question was the number one advice I give to people coming into the community or in the community is honesty in here goes a long way. If you can be honest in the discussion, whether you're challenged or things like that. You can say, I don't know, or you can say, hey, that actually is, kind of challenging to my belief, things like that. That goes a long way with getting ridiculed on here by anybody that is taking this serious.
You got a weird sound for your mic.
Yeah, I don't think that's me, that squeaking stuff.
Yeah, is that you or is that Kyle?
I think
I only hear it when you're talking though. It's weird.
Huh. I
think it's
usually
hard,
hear it when Kyle's talking. That's why I wasn't sure that it was me.
But-
I'll mute anytime I'm not talking.
No worries,
I'll
no worries.
refresh as well.
But I think Kyle had demonstrated that he was willing to acquire new information and evaluate it to get to that recovering from irrationality and a road to rationalism.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to highlight. Yeah, it sounds like it.
Can I ask Carl a question? Was there a specific point, or was it like an amalgamation of points? Because I mean, I used to be an atheist, and like there was a jumping off point for me is when I realised the amount of hypocrisy on that particular side of the fence, as you would. Was there like that moment for you where it was like, oh, I get it, it's like this, or was it like an amount, or was it like a building? It was like building blocks or something.
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier. I think Steve asked me a similar question. No, there really was no aha moment that I can remember. It was really just a combination of just various things that I had encountered, and that I would take and shelve, and a lot of it was stuff that, I either get into conversations with people and not be able to answer their point, and I'm not just going to sit there and lie to people and say, oh, well, if I don't know, I don't know. And I would shelve it.
Yeah, that's great.
I would read stuff and I listen to podcasts and I watch videos and, I absorb it and shelve it. And then eventually, it was just like, wow, this really just doesn't make sense anymore. And there's no way that I can be okay with myself or be, I guess, consistent in my beliefs and still have this thing over here that I'm just, this is we're just going to assume this is correct and not think about it anymore. I just couldn't do that any longer. So,
well, what would you say? Okay, we have a lot of younger creationists still in our community. I mean, it's not an exceptional amount, but it's notable that we've all tried to engage with, and we've all ran the gamut with them to explain to them why their argumentation is hard. And I say this, and I know it sounds bad, but basically, they're not smart enough to figure out why they're wrong. I mean, this is the way it is. They're not smart enough. What would you say to them to maybe get them to say to themselves, perhaps they don't have the right viewpoint on things like evolution, or perhaps they don't know it quite what they think it is? Because you know as well as I do, every young creationist in the world has a straw man version of evolution, right? Yeah.
I think the biggest thing to understand, I guess the main point, I guess, that I want to bring up is that, first of all, your faith does not rise and fall with your interpretation of Genesis 1-3, or how well that interpretation lines up with contemporary science. So, first and foremost, that. But if I could recommend a specific resource or book, reading Genesis 1. Yeah, reading Genesis 1-2, an evangelical conversation, is probably the best written resource that I can think of off the top of my head that would be a good, I guess, like a good starter resource, because it really surveys the various positions within the biblical studies community as far as what they're doing with Genesis and what they're doing with the creation narrative, at least right now. So there's also, I think, like a $200 book that you can buy that was put together from an international conference in 2011. But, I don't think anybody would want to do that. The other book is like, I think, $15 on Amazon. So it's a good resource to have, at least if you're interested in knowing what people are actually saying, which I think a lot of Christians do. They want to be familiar with, what the predominant Christian thought is, and younger creationism is not mainstream in Christianity. It really is.
True.
Yeah, by any means.
That's something that needs to be reiterated multiple times. And it is not, creationism is not mainstream Christianity. It's actually very, very fringe. And by the way, thank you, David, for the super chat donation. People have been asking about super chat. Let me throw that out there real quick. What super chat is that they got rid of the fan funding. So people that were actually like going through fan funding to give me a few bucks, they got rid of that. A lot of people still use PayPal, and PayPal is the best possible way. Tom actually likes PayPal. Tom.
I love PayPal.
PayPal is great. But the super chat is super chat is basically a way to get your comment noticed more, right? And it obviously is a great way to donate as well. So I mean, I'm a big fan of super chat, but I've also got the PayPal link in there as well. PayPal actually goes 100%, and super chat's a little less, but
on your end, you have, like, I have access. I have a credit card that I can use at ATMs and things. I can instantly have access to it.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, PayPal has the ability to have a credit card now. Either way, it's fine. So the super chat, I mean, if you want to donate to the channel, by all means, a few dollars here and there. I love that, because as people know, I do monetize my videos. This is for monetary gain. Let's be realistic. But I try to give back and try to provide content. This is why I'm starting new series like this and lined up many good guests for this very reason, because I want something that people can be entertained by, and it's not just the same old shit that we listen to all the time. Viva Hernando, you send me a link or message, and I'll get you the link. And like I want to say to Kyle, you're a fabulous guest so far. We have never really talked. We've never talked online. Just we have over the computer, but
yeah,
this is actually meeting or exceeding my expectations. So
hey.
Yeah, I'm glad you're taking this opportunity.
Oh yeah, thanks, Xbox. What is your by the way? Do I just call you Xbox? Or?
Yeah, you call me Nick or Xbox, either way. Most people call me Xbox.
We call him asshole. We call him shithead. It's just lovely terms we have for each other in the community.
But yeah, I wanted to add real quick before you move on that not just because this is a minority view doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. But there is, once you look at it, there are reasons why some of the scholars and more the bigger theologists aren't taking this view. And when you look into it, you find out the reasons why. So don't take it on just that it's the minority, that it's crappy, or that no one.
Well, no, I mean, I've definitely done my due diligence, and my reasoning for not accepting your creationism isn't just that it's a minority position, but I mean, I think that in and of itself, right, it's kind of telling, right?
Right, absolutely.
A lot of these young earth creationist groups want to champion their view as the only valid Christian view, when that's just false.
Right. I agree completely. I wanted to make sure I wasn't trying to attack you, that you're saying a minority. I just want to make sure that I just want the audience to not start taking things as, well, it's the minority view, we can dismiss it.
Right.
Look into it. If you have a view, look into it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely look into it, but you just realize that because I think that's sort of the trap that people get caught up into. At least people who go to some of these people that are members of some of these more conservative churches with a young earth lean to them, is that they are, at least in my experience, I was presented with this concept as it is the only concept out there. There is no other doctrine or no other position that is valid, or that's Christian, or that's basically this is what you believe if you're a Christian. This is it, and that's not.
I know you're not a concordist, but do you kind of follow the approach that if you have the book of Scripture and you have the book of nature, that you kind of go by the book of nature if there's a discrepancy there, because you may not be reading the Scripture correctly, but you can at least observe things and say, you know what, I know this is true because I can see it, and then kind of apply it to the Scriptures. Because I think that's one of the problems with the younger creationism is that they don't apply the book of nature. They don't apply the facts of reality, of chemistry, and physics, and biology. They ignore all of it.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, no, I'm not a concordist at all. But I think when you're doing, and this is something that you'll see a lot of people who work in biblical studies reiterate, is that when it comes to doing exegesis, science ought not factor into it at all. It's not how you do exegesis. You don't start with science and then,
right.
Well, this is what we're going to believe because this is what science directs us to believe. Now, in the past, when you did have stuff like Darwin's theory of evolution, when you had stuff like biblical archaeology, when you had stuff like higher criticism, those sorts of ideas did sort of direct the discussion a little bit. Well, what's going on? Are we getting another?
Sorry no, I sent you. Sorry about that. I didn't know that you had your sound all the way turned up. No, I sent you a link to the Great Debate community, to officially join, and my channel if you can sort of subscribe. But I didn't want to bring it up. I just was doing that when you were talking. I multitask when I do these things. I got
That's some balls on you, by the way, Steve, calling yourself the owner of the Great Debate.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that awesome? You know, it's funny on that. It's like Helena had explained G-Man that, you know, when I say I don't know why I have to explain it now because you guys all know, but when I said I'm the owner of the Great Debate Community, I'm literally referring to the Great Debate Community G Plus forum, right? That community that's on G Plus, and there's actually 3 of them. But the other 2 have nowhere near the members we have. They're like 42 or something, right? We have like 540. I own that community because that's the person who's in charge of it, right? That's called the owner. And then you have moderators. It was never meant to imply that I own the Great Debate Community as a whole, because there's a lot of tangential people in the Great Debate Community that's not actually in the forum, like Matt Dillahunty. I would consider him Great Debate Community. Arn Raw, those guys, right?
Yeah,
so G-Man doesn't quite understand that because G-Man doesn't quite understand a lot of things.
You don't own me. You don't own me.
I do own you.
No.
You're all my. But first of all, you're all my.
Steve's not cool enough to know that when you spell owned, you use a P for pwned because he owned the Great Debate. He wasn't cool enough to do that, and he made a mistake.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're all my socks because according to various people, I have thousands of socks, and you're all it.
Yeah,
so.
Steve's all alone. All these are sock accounts that join him in Hangouts.
Exactly. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny.
Internet.
I take dispute with that because of exactly what my avatar says. So.
I thought it was kind of funny that G-Man just didn't quite understand what is meant by that. But anyways, I've kind of changed it to be. I changed it to a host, anyways, because that way there's no confusion. I'm just a host of the Great Debate Community. So
you put all the work into it. You own it.
Oh yeah.
I put a lot of work in this community. I put a lot of work to get guests. I put a lot of work in.
Well, there's finally a Google Plus community called the Great Debate Community that has to do with this particular community, because before it was just an unofficial title.
Yeah, I've tried to formalize a bunch
of different fringe groups that just happen to meet together sometimes.
I've definitely tried to make it more formalized, right? And by the way, Thomas Brody, thank you for the super chat. He says hummus is overrated. You can have your $5 back, Thomas. Hummus is not overrated. Hummus is freaking amazing. I mean, who thought about taking chickpeas and like smushing them all up and throwing some roasted pine nuts there and say, hey, you know what? Put this on chips. You know, it's brilliant though.
My girl's a hummus eater.
I have a question, Kyle, if you don't mind. Like,
okay, yeah. Go.
Online here, how often do you besides just running into us now? Online, how much have you run into any kind of great debate type things where
as far as
people are questioning it and wanting to argue about it or debate about it?
I mean, I'm a member of several groups on Facebook that sort of have these kinds of discussions. Most of them are, I guess, Christian oriented. But you know, usually there's some pretty decent conversations. Like I said, my focus primarily is exegesis. So biblical studies, Old Testament, ancient Near East. That's kind of the stuff that I'm interested in the most. I've got a buddy who deals primarily with New Testament and historical Jesus research. So we all kind of have our fortes, but I'm willing to talk about
for sure
anything pretty much.
Yeah, right on. A lot of here, like Steve does a lot of the science stuff. I get into a lot of the philosophy side of things, but you'll find every angle around here coming at it.
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't understand my channel. Well, okay, I'm just going to say that. Let me rephrase that. The other side, what I refer to as the Clown Car Posse, they're basically a lot of scientifically inept, philosophically inept people. They don't understand my channel. My channel has taken off leaps and bounds and have very, very wonderful guests. We have great discussions in here. They are using a very, very myopic model where they're saying, you know what, we're going to have hangouts, but we're only going to let certain people in. We're only going to talk to people that agree with us. We're only going to have the echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to watch that. You know, nobody cares if everybody agrees with you. I mean, there are certain times where it's great. Like here, we have a hangout here. Well, I think across the board, most of us are going to agree on certain things. But this is more of an educational type hangout where people are learning about how to recover from irrationality. What steps do you need to take? And I think Kyle's making very excellent points of what needs to be done in order to start the process of thinking more rationally, right? But they think that my channel is dedicated to like atheism and to convert people to away from Christ or anything. And I'm like, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's just absurd because most of the people in my hangout are theist, or I've had pagans, I have deists. I mean, it's just you name it, I've had everything on the spectrum. So the theological position that somebody has is completely irrelevant to me. It's this: are you a rational person? So I've said it's not atheist against theism anymore, which is the great debate. What it used to be, it is rationalism against irrationalism, right?
Right, exactly.
Tom says we need more subscribers. Yeah, well, I missed the boat on the subscription thing, to be honest with you guys. People that have the very high subscribers, they've been around for 5, 6, 7 years. I didn't show up on the scene until like 2-3 years ago, 3 years ago for YouTube. 2013 actually is when I think I started my channel. Maybe it was 14. Was it 13 or 14? I don't know. But I kind of missed the boat on that. But there's going to be a resurgence. But I'm going to get into that a little later on in this video about what I'm doing to try to partner with other people to try to get the subscription count up. Yeah.
It's not impossible, but it is a little bit tricky.
It's a lot more difficult than
this particular niche. It's a little harder than doing something that is kind of guaranteed a whole bunch of views. Like,
hey, but if I make a video on cats, I guarantee it I'm gonna have 1 million freaking subs. Right? Hey, little laser, but. Anyways, back to Kyle here because he's getting bored. Look at this. He's just like, I'm just going to sit here and eat some chips and be bored while you guys talk about it. Hey, Kyle, let me give you advance warning. We tend to digress often.
Yeah.
Steve,
just let you know.
Just so you know, cats in the sidebar.
No, I think Steve tries to handle it the way I handle it. When we're talking about something, tangents around that subject are fine because the hangouts tend to go for hours sometimes.
Right, no,
tangents around it are going to happen. Right?
I mean, I worked last night. I woke up at 3 o'clock. I had a patient that almost coded, so busy night. So I slept hard, so
for sure.
I'm hungry.
See, I didn't sleep last night. You're fortunate because I was up all night. I was contacting a bunch of people. For anybody who's been following my G+, I've lined up a lot of guests coming up, and so I was literally in communication with people all night long. I was a lot of things I was working on. And so I didn't get to sleep. And then I ran to those guys this morning to do the pre-sup and the other guy. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of nap before I have this hangout with Kyle. Well, I didn't get my nap. So
it's all good.
Somebody had to ask him.
Yeah, I didn't
Kyle
sleep
a doctor.
I don't feel bad. I had a doctor's appointment today that I had to stay up to go through. And it was a session, so it was like an hour-long process.
Sleep
Actually,
is
2 hours. It was like 30 minutes before, and then 30 minutes in the discharge and all that.
So somebody had asked Kyle, "You're a doctor. Do you want to address?" I know you're not, but do you want to address what you do?
No, I'm not a doctor. I'm a nurse. I work in the ICU.
Yeah, he actually does important stuff because the nurse gets all the nurses actually do all the work. The doctors get all the credit, right? Is that how it works?
Sometimes, actually, the family practice came in last night and started a couple central lines for us, which was nice. They're usually pretty cool, but I mean, when shit hit the like 4 in the morning, it was not fun.
I actually, my friend Ruhif, who he's going through chemotherapy, he actually put a video on of them removing the central line. I'm like, you can at least warn somebody, man. I don't want to see this. I am not squeamish, but I'm just not interested in seeing anything that involves blood or just I don't know.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, so I give you guys props. I mean, nursing is not an easy profession. I actually have known many nurses. They have to know a little bit about a lot of different things. So
yeah.
Okay, now that we have someone here who's a nurse, they've gone through nursing school, so they have nursing textbooks. Kyle, can you please explain ATP synthase to us from the perspective of a nursing textbook?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. I don't know if he's ever looked at ATP synthase, but
And did you ever have to cover this?
Maybe briefly. I mean, really, the bottom line is that you need energy to do things, and you have to eat to get energy.
Okay, so from that, we could extrapolate that the information about ATP synthase that would be in a nursing textbook would be the basic information to explain the concept, or the process, so you have an understanding of what's going on.
When you sit,
but it does not go in depth.
Right. When you sit for boards, they're not going to ask you any questions about ATP synthase. It's not going to happen.
Well, I'll let Steve explain why I'm asking this question.
Well, I think it's kind of self-explanatory in a way, but he doesn't know about empiricism, so that's what you're asking.
Right.
We have somebody in our again, the clown car posse in our community that used to use the argument until I had a debate with him and totally demolished him on it, because I do know about turbines. Kyle, you don't know about my background, but my background was I used to train people to operate nuclear power plants. I went through nuclear power school. I have a little bit of an understanding how turbines work. And his argument was basically ATP synthase is a mechanical turbine or biological turbine, ergo intelligent design.
No,
right?
It's not.
What's that? Yeah. And so he got this guy learned everything he needed to know basically off two sources. One, a nursing handbook, page 235, I think it was, or something, and Wikipedia. Okay, this was his education.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually took biology in college. I did have to learn about ATP synthase and electron transport chain, but I didn't remember much until recently when I'm like, you know what? I do remember these, but not enough to discuss them. But then I kind of delved really heavily into it because I was going to have a debate with this guy, and he just was shit. He was bad. In fact, he ran away during the Q&A. He said, I don't want to continue this anymore. Who does that in a debate?
We should give him the link so he can check it out.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll give it to him later, sure. But the point being is that the reason Pseudo's asking that question is because you generally don't have to know very much about these topics specifically to do certain things, like nursing. You just don't have to. I think your explanation was more than adequate to describe what ATP synthase is. It's basically chemical storage. You're basically making ATP, which is an energy molecule, and you're using a proton gradient in order to do that, and you get that energy from the breaking down of food. So the food breaks down, you have an electron that's produced, it goes through all your different little complexes, it produces this ion gradient, and the thing goes roundy, spinny, and produces ATP. Other than that, who the fuck cares?
Roundy, spinny.
Yeah, was that too technical? I don't like using technical terms. Was roundy too technical?
Technical fallacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe the technical term is whirly. It whirls.
Oh, whirly. Okay. But I mean, would you agree with that? I mean, for somebody who's a nurse, I mean, how much do you really have to know about ATP synthase, dude?
Almost none. I mean, now different units, right? So a lot of what I do has to deal more with critical thinking, interpreting lab values, making the right calls in light of those lab values.
Did you see? I actually had a friend that was went through nursing school. One of the things I had to help her with back when I actually remembered something was something called Reynolds number and laminar flow rates. Do you remember anything like that from nursing school, where you in the actual vein, how the blood is pumped, and you have a laminar flow on the vessel, and then as you started getting to the middle of the vein, you start getting more turbulent flow, and that's based upon what's called Reynolds number?
Yeah, I mean, we went over it, but again,
not a lot you have to know about it, but
the scientific aspect of it is always nice to know. But nursing is very much a skills-oriented profession. So, I mean, knowing that is nice, but it's not going to help me drop a Foley catheter into anybody.
Right. Yeah, they want me to ask you.
I've got to jump out, Steve.
Okay, thank you, buddy.
Tell Kyle it was really nice meeting you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Xbox.
Y'all have a good night.
Yep. Yeah, they want me to ask you about DNA dissolving and degrading in water, but again, as a nurse, you don't have to know really what happens when DNA goes into water. I mean, you don't really. Does it really matter if you understand what dissolving means? No, I don't think so. I mean, he's not a biochemist, guys. He's a nurse. So he would never really care about the whole, does DNA degrade in water or does it dissolve in water, right?
Yeah.
So, that's actually a little bit off topic. And he's like, what does this have to do with the rationality? Oh, it kind of does. It's tangential, Kyle, because the people that we deal with are very irrational. And so they don't want to learn the actual things correctly. So when they're being corrected by people that do know their stuff, like Dr. Fiona Robertson and Hawkeye Champ and other people that know their stuff very well, they just are oblivious to it. They're just tuned out, la la la, fingers and ears, and they think that they know what they're doing. When I guarantee it, between all of them, I don't think they even have the equivalency of a GED. And I'm not being demeaning, but that's the truth.
Yeah, that's the truth. And you're gonna get a video made about you probably.
Video.
One of them.
You're going to be internet famous, Kyle.
Yeah, because they're going to make a video about you. You might have misspoke something. You might have said catheter weird to them or something. You know,
Take it as a badge of honor. When it comes to YouTube, if people make videos about you, it's either one of two things: either you did a really good job, or they're basically too stupid to realize that you did a really good job. At least in our
if they make a video about you, you did good.
Yeah.
Even though they say you did bad.
I got a lot of hate videos against me. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's pretty hated on this.
No, really? Thanks for reminding me.
I'm not very familiar with the community, so
it's interesting. It's like a soap opera, really.
It is a world unto itself, to say the least.
In a way, it's kind of like high school. There's different cliques.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But let me turn it over a little bit. We do have people that want to ask some questions, if you don't mind, Kyle. We actually have Mithridates here, who actually is a practicing general practitioner. We also have RSC, who is a MD in the live chat. So I think RSC wanted to ask you a question. Go ahead, RSC. By the way, it's like a few seconds delay, so we'll see what. And Mithridates, did you want to chime in, my friend? You've been awfully quiet. And he still is. Wonder where he went. Oh, shortly. Oh, he said shortly. Okay. So RSC just did say he wanted to ask a question. But anyways, while he's thinking of his question, Kyle, did you kind of is this what's kind of expected? You've never been in a hangout before, I take it, right?
No, not really.
And you never will again, right?
No,
I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, he's hooked.
No, I mean, I like the fact that you're able to come on here and say, you know what, I had all these weird things that I used to believe. I don't any longer. I think that is somebody who is very, very self-confident, somebody who's very, very intelligent, very educated, and I just admire that. I really do. I think it's wonderful.
It's even more confident to say you hold on to certain ones because you haven't researched them fully yet. So.
Yes, I respected that. That was big time because that's something you don't hear a lot.
Yeah, I mean that's really what it was for me, and I told Steve this already. Is that I never really had anybody to go to with the kind of questions that I had, so I kind of had to do my own research, and just over a period of time, just looking into the stuff myself, I just sort of almost changed my mind. I was like, no, I can't be consistent in my beliefs and still hold on to a young Earth view. I can't.
Did you ever look at the radiometric dating aspect of the fact that there's so many different types of isochron dating that have a consilience to around 4.5 billion years?
Yeah, and I remember using some of the arguments that what is it? A freshly killed seal was dated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember using that, and then.
Oh, you actually used that. I mean, you literally were having discussions with people, and you thought that was a good argument.
Yeah, because I thought, carbon dating and radiometric dating isn't accurate because there's been all these mistakes and whatnot. And then once I actually started researching it, it was like, okay, yeah. So for every let's say 100 carbon dates, you've got one that comes up weird.
Well, it's called the reservoir effect. Yeah,
6,000-year-old Earth. It doesn't.
Well, it's one of those things that's like, okay, we know radiocarbon dating does not work for marine life, and we know why. We know that there's a different concentration of carbon because of the calcium carbonate in water. And so they're not getting it from atmospheric sources. So we don't do carbon testing on marine life or anything that eats marine life. That's been well documented. In fact, those claims came from radiometric journals, but they were taken by, I think that particular claim was either taken by Kent Hovind or definitely promoted by Kent Hovind. He subsequently has been debunked on that. Matter of fact, the two claims that I debunked, well, okay, let me rephrase this, that other people had debunked, but I really brought to his attention, whereas with the mammoth, remember the baby Dima and the mammoth that was radiocarbon dated to two different dates, even though it was like the same mammoth, right? Ever heard of that one?
No.
Kyle? Did he just fall asleep? Was he frozen? He's leaned over. I think we killed Kyle.
Knowledge bomb.
You killed Kyle, you bastards! Oh, is that Kenny?
No, it looks like he froze.
Yeah. Kyle never dies. It's always Kenny. He may have to reset. But anyways, the one of the claims that he had made was that baby Dima was radiometrically dated to two different time periods, one of the leg and one of the torso or something. The problem being is if you actually look at the radiometric journal, it's two different mammoths. One was found in 1940, one was found in 1948 in two very different locations. Yeah, so but see, Ken Hovind didn't have to really validate his claims back then, right? He just could throw the shit out there, and who had the internet, right? Who could go look at this radiometric journal to even validate his claim? Well, now it's online. So.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, Myth. Welcome, buddy. Yeah.
Your consilience point, I think, is a really good one. Hopefully, Kyle will be able to reconnect, and we can ask him this. So basically, and this occurred to me, is that Kyle?
Welcome back. There we go.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I had to reboot my computer.
Hey, Kyle. We were just talking about the consilience of how the different fields sort of all line up against young Earth creationism, and basically, I was going to float this. If this particular thought ever occurred to you, okay? So you have this online community, let's say like Ronnie, who are undereducated or whatever, but say they study real hard, they focus on something specific in biology.
You're really, they're playing up Ronnie. They're calling him undereducated.
Yeah, probably so. But let's say they find some little quirk, right, in biology. Is it possible they could actually be right about something and the expert biologist be wrong about? Well, yeah. That's an outside chance, right? But then you look at the anthropologists, and they disagree with all the expert anthropologists, right? And then you move to like geology, and then they disagree with all the expert geologists, and then you move to cosmology, and they think all the expert cosmologists are wrong. So the basic question is, what are the odds that a group of undereducated, dogmatic, religious?
Can you use the technical term, dumb fuck?
Or douche, yeah.
That's the technical term we use is dumb fucks.
Would be right on the technical issues, and all the experts be wrong.
Right. I mean, is it within the realm of possibility?
No.
Sure, maybe. But is it likely? No. I don't think that in and of itself would I guess dispute the validity of the claim, but I think it would be telling. It would be very telling. So if you don't have any sort of peer-reviewed literature on your side, you don't really have a leg to stand on.
Good point.
It's not just one area, though. See, this is what I'm saying. You will have prodigies come up out of nowhere that are uneducated, and then they're geniuses, and they can upend fields on different topics. But what you're not going to have is you're not every expert in their individual fields are not going to be simultaneously wrong about the basics of their fields, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, according to the Clown Crowd Posse, they really are. These guys are so undereducated that they literally don't even understand the most rudimentary basic concepts. I cannot emphasize that enough. I'm not. I mean, you think I'm being hyperbolic here? I'm not. They are so fundamentally flawed.
Now let the record show that I don't support making fun of autistic people.
Yeah, you know what? And I agree with you, but they're not autistic. They're actually functional members of society that are so arrogant that they think they know more than people with an actual education, and that I am all for mocking. In fact, not only do I tolerate it, I rapidly encourage it. You know?
Isn't that a sin too? Arrogance or something somewhere down the line? No, that's pride, right? Or some kind of sin. Should be. Seems like it would be.
Hey, Steve, here's a question for you and some of our other regulars. Sure. And this is not, I'm not being rhetorical either. Have you ever seen one of the young earthers have a very good, very accurate, fundamental understanding about evolution and basic science?
Not a single one.
I haven't either. Not a single
one. And I know that sounds weird. I know you guys think that I'm like being hyperbolic with that. I'm not. Not a single one.
Is anyone else on here?
No. Oh, there you go. I mean, to give you an example, Kyle, one of the guys in the other side doesn't understand something as simple that 2 dogs will produce a dog.
Yeah.
They're waiting for a chicken to come out.
Yeah, see, I've run across that. It's like some people think, and I mentioned earlier, they think it's like freaking Pokemon. One day you have a one thing, and then the next day it's something else, a horse that hatched out of an egg or something.
Another question they would ask, somebody just asked this, and I told them I would ask, are you concerned if you have any coworkers or people in the medical profession that are like younger creationists or ideas? Now, granted, I don't think that would really affect their work. I don't want to make the argument that just because you're a younger creationist, you can't do your job effectively. That would be silly.
It doesn't come up with work. It doesn't come up with work.
Okay.
We don't have time.
But do you think it affects people learning about the topics? Because I can tell you that I can make an argument that I've known people that were in the younger creationists that have told me when they did go to college, they had a much more difficult time learning the material. They were very resistant of it, but I think I hate to say it, I think it does dumb people down.
I mean, I think because of the way my field is, and because of the way medicine in general is, I don't really see it playing that much of a role. I mean, granted, a lot of stuff, a lot of the technology that we have and use in the medical field exists because things like biological evolution are true and does happen. So I think some of the technology and some of the methods that we use are rooted in evolutionary theory, but I don't see how being a young Earth creationist would, again, impact my ability to do various skills or to interpret lab values.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But I do think, so I will make one argument, Kyle, and hear me out on this. I don't think in of itself younger creationism is going to affect people's jobs. However, we do have people in our community that because they're younger creationists, it's a domino effect. They're more willing to believe other batshit things like homeopathy, homeopathic medicine, or flat Earth, or conspiratorial stuff. And I think that may affect their job, because if you're in a position of leadership and you can't make rational decisions because you don't have the mindset to understand how to critically think, then I think it does affect you. And especially, again, if you're in the medical profession, you say, you know what, we have a documented way to cure this, but you know what, we're not going to give you that. We are going to give you a diluted red onion that has 1 atom per billion molecules, or actually several trillion molecules, and we're going to give that to you as a cure.
I mean, maybe they think that, right? Maybe they think that, cutting up some ginger and distilling it in some hot tea or something would be more beneficial than, say a whatever, right?
Chemotherapy, yeah.
A protonics drip, right? But because of in the facility that I work in, we have electronic sharding. So if it's not done, or if you deviate from the regimen that's been, ordered by the doctor, somebody's going to know about it. So I think the fear of having your license pulled is shouldn't be underestimated.
Oh, I think it should be malpractice.
You will go to court for that.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, for example, like somebody just posted today, we have somebody in our community who claims to be a nurse, doesn't understand how rockets work in space, thinks the Earth is flat, and advocates a doctor in Mexico that says he can cure cancer by flooding you full of supposedly thousands of dollars, that's what he charges, of vitamin C. Now, if I said, hey, Myth, would you recommend to your patients, you know what? You have cancer, but you know what? Don't have chemo. Don't have radiation therapy. You know what? All you got to do is just suck down a bunch of vitamin C and you'll be fine. Would that be not grounds for malpractice in America?
Yeah, I mean the literature is pretty much out on that one. Vitamin C does not really affect cancer cells. I mean, at least not many of the studies that I've seen. Now, you can make an argument that total body radiation or radiation pills or chemotherapy, whatever, in some cases are more detrimental.
Absolutely, sure.
Than the cancer itself. And you don't have to. You don't have to get chemo. You don't have to get total body radiation if you don't want to.
There's different types of alternative ways of handling it, right?
And I think we need to move past that. We eventually need to get to a point where we develop better methods of treating and curing cancer than total body radiation.
Do you advocate more of a holistic approach?
Huh?
Do you advocate more of a holistic approach, a whole body? Because I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with having like proper nutrients and
that is the standard right now as far as nursing profession goes, and medicine in general. We've really gone away from just pushing drugs, right? A holistic approach to health is very good, and it doesn't matter what your religious views are. If you do have a patient that comes in that's religious, seeing to their specific religious and cultural needs, as far as the literature goes, is beneficial to that person's overall well-being. So yeah, I advocate for stuff like that. But if you're gonna start, freaking cutting up juniper and doing alchemy in the fucking med room, no.
But what do you think about that, Myth?
I think that is a really good point, and it gets to two things that we were talking about earlier. One, it kind of retards your critical thinking abilities. But two, not understanding consensus and the importance of consensus and the expert opinions and being so arrogant that you think you can simultaneously disagree with all the experts. Antonio quoted a OBGYN doctor the other day about the definition of abortion, right? That kind of differed from usual. There's a obstetrics group called ACOG, and pretty much they have the expert consensus opinions, definitions, guidelines on things. Okay.
Well, I had to do a research paper on some stuff that ACOG put out a couple years ago. So yeah, I'm familiar with them.
So an individual nurse or individual doctor doesn't say, you know what, I think I'm going to call something, I'm going to redefine something today. I think I'm going to try out a new treatment today that makes sense to me. And what you'll see with the young earthers a lot, they'll also have other crazy beliefs that they hold. They'll also believe in the crazy cancer doctors in Mexico. They'll also think that angels had babies with, humans that became giants. And they also think that, the list goes on and on, right? Once you're open to one set of crazy beliefs, then you're open to other sets of crazy beliefs if you accept things without critical reasoning and you don't trust the experts.
That is so true. So true. It's a slippery slope of irrationalism, right? I mean, I think that's brilliant that what you said, that you start with one thing that is just out there, you are more likely to have batshit beliefs. Now, I'm not against people that really do believe something for certain reasons, right? For example, if you believe in ghosts, I get that. I've had some weird shit happen. Okay, I'm not going to deny that. I don't think that I really do believe in ghosts. I think that I can provide naturalistic explanations, but someone who hasn't really formulated why they have those naturalistic things as an explanation, they're going to say, you know what, maybe there is a ghost. I don't think that's irrational per se, but there's a limit. For example, like these psychics, right? They say they can talk to the dead. all you got to do is a little research, and you realize that's complete bullshit across the board. To me, that is a very irrational belief.
And before anybody corrects me on this, I'm not saying that just because there's an expert consensus, that necessarily means they're right.
Right, that would be a fallacy.
But if you go against that, you need to have good reason. You definitely need to have done your individual education in the area at least.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, you know what? I can't really imagine. I really can't think of a time where somebody that was highly uneducated ever went down as a great thinker or a great scientist.
Yeah, you don't see them a lot.
Right? You just don't see it happen, right? I mean, these guys think they've overturned Einstein. I mean, Mr. Intelligent Design comes
Steve,
up.
Point of order. Jeb Clampett. He wasn't very well educated. He did very well from.
Yeah, he found oil.
He was also a deep thinker, you know.
It was bubbling.
Yeah, he found oil. He didn't come up with a scientific theory overturning anything. But Mr. Intelligent Design, you know, he took something the other day from Michio Kaku and just ran with it, not realizing that Michio Kaku generally puts out things for dissemination to the masses, to the general populace, right? And he gets a lot of shit wrong. I mean, I've done my research on Kaku. I like Kaku, don't get me wrong. And there's works to get him on this program next month, and I have the utmost respect for him. But I think he does word things to explain to the populace things easier, you know, more difficult concepts, and it may kind of technically be wrong kind of stuff. But Mr. Intelligent Design doesn't know enough about the topic to recognize that, right? And everybody will explain to him, dude, you've never had a physics course in your life. You admitted you've never had a physics course. So why would you try to like really start talking about things like relativity when you don't even understand the concept of what a fictitious force really is, right? So
Actually, it's a little worse than that, though, because you do see individual instances of geniuses come out of nowhere. I forget his name, Ramanujan, whatever the Indian mathematician's name.
Yeah, Ramanujan. I know about Ramanujan series. That's how you get -1/2 when you do a divergent series for 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 = -1/2.
Can I
You use a
point out
Ramanujan
those
sequence.
geniuses appear out of nowhere just as I joined?
But RSC, were you guys psychic or something? Because RSC just literally asked me that question in the live feed. Steve, have you heard of? I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but Ramanujan. Yes, I know who he is, and as a matter of fact, I have actually comments on some pages like Numberphile and Singing Banana dealing with that exact divergent series. So
Right.
yeah,
And then Maxwell in physics. There's several
-1/12. Yes, -1/12.
There's several examples of people we could throw out. But the point, though, is that the Ronnie types would be simultaneously overthrowing the experts in all the fields. They would be overturning Einstein at the same time as Darwin.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You know what? Yeah, they just didn't overturn evolutionary theory. They overturn relativity as well. I mean, give them the Nobel Prize now, guys. Give them the Nobel
come on,
Prize.
Steve. Ronnie is a genius. It's just his IQ is so high that it
so high
went
back
off
to
the
negative.
scale and then went back around to the bottom and had to come back up.
Popeye's secret sauce.
Well, there is something called the alternative number line. If you've ever been familiar with mathematical theory, the alternative number line actually is a circle. It actually does do that. It actually does have a negative infinity and positive infinity. They come back around. But yeah, and I hope that you guys did hear the correction. It's -1/12. I think I said a -1/2 because I was actually thinking of a telescopic series where you have what's called a Cicero, if I remember correctly, summation. Cicero. It's when you have like an alternating series like 1 + 0 + 1 or 1 - 1 or excuse me, what would it be like +1 + 0 - 1 + 1. I mean, you have an alternating series, and if you actually do a summation of it, it actually the summation infinitively comes to -1/2. So,
Hey, Steve.
yeah, isn't math great, guys?
Steve.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Hello. Hey, Steve.
Yes. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Been a
So,
while.
Mr. Intelligent Design, I thought he was an electrical engineer. You said he's never had a physics
No, he claimed
course?
to be a civil engineer, but then I pressed him on it, and he said he's never taken a physics course. I asked him what Hooke's law was. I asked him what Young's modulus was. I asked him what Pythagoras' theorem was. Didn't know any of it. And I'm sorry, if you're a civil engineer, you know those things. They're basic. That's like asking a nurse, "Hey, do you know what blood pressure is?"
Right.
Kyle?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, if I said, "Hey, Kyle, could you tell me what blood pressure is?" and you tell me something totally oh yeah, that deals with the brain and the synapses and the dendrites and the neurons. I'd be like, you're an idiot, right? You know, so that's the
There's
kind of
only one thing you forgot to ask him.
What's that? What's that, Andres? I didn't hear a word he said. You're getting a lot of feedback. But anyways, so when I'm asking him these basic questions, I know he doesn't have a degree in civil engineering. There's no freaking way.
Well, so Kyle, you gave up young Earth creationism, but you're still a theist, right? You're still
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
The question I always have for these young Earth creationist types is like, is it like, were you like raised really conspiratorial? Is it you're conspiratorial and you gravitate towards that, or is religion what kind of makes you more willing to go into that?
It was, just part of just a religious doctrine that I was brought up in. I didn't think the earth was flat. I didn't think that the reptilians are,
Oh, but they are
leading the New World Order and the Illuminati.
Shush, Steve. Shush. Don't talk about that.
I wasn't one of those. I wasn't. I could see how some people would be, right, if you're gullible enough to believe X. Maybe you're also gullible enough to believe Y. I wasn't one of those.
But you say that, but isn't it because you're just scared of the overlords that are watching us right now?
Yeah.
Well,
I cannot comment on that.
Plead the fifth. It's always a safe position.
Right. Yes.
Okay, I actually have a question for Kyle then.
Okay.
The church you went to, was it a small church, medium size, or a mega church?
We had around, I'd say, 70 to 80 members.
Okay, so a small church.
Yeah.
Was Young Earth something they always did?
Yes.
Or was it something rather recent?
Something that they always did from as far back as I can remember.
What denomination were they? If I can ask.
Church of Christ.
Have you reached out to any of the members? Has anybody else left Young Earth Creationism as a group?
From that congregation?
Yeah. From that congregation.
Yeah, one of is actually the first friend I ever had, right? Because I started going to that church for as long as I can remember, right? And I met this kid when I was 2 years old, and because he also went there, and I brought him out of it along with me. And I've had conversation with other people that that went to that church. Granted, it was a lot of older people, so not really too many people in my age group. But my friend that went there, I brought him out of Young Earth Creationism when I left, and he's like, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I got at least one out.
Yeah, well, you know what? One is better than zero. I mean, I've only had a limited impact as well. As you know, Wayne left. You had met him earlier. He had left Young Earth Creationism. And there's a few other success stories that I've had. Not to that extreme, because he did that really quickly after our debate, and he just was like, you know what, Steve, you're right. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
So.
Kyle, I'm sure your church has Wednesday night services, right? Where you do maybe Bible studies or random things.
Yeah, we did. Now, to be clear, though, I no longer attend that congregation. The one I attend now is a very progressive, Church of Christ off of Lake Conroe.
What would be the response to your previous congregation's minister if you went to him and said, I have an idea. Let's have an Ask the Evolutionist night on one of our Wednesday night services where we have an evolutionist in that we can ask them questions. What do you think the immediate response to that would be?
Well, it would probably be something along the lines of, we already have a set class, or we have a set, it was a very structured congregation, right?
But they wouldn't have a negative response just because of what it is?
I don't know if they would have a negative response just because of what it is. I mean, Yeah, they are, as far as I know, all younger creationists. I know the elders are. I know the preachers are.
Because I know some churches that do things like that, and they'll have like an Ask the Atheist day and that kind of thing. And some churches that basically feel like they're protecting their people from it. You know, it's like what was it, The Simpsons or Futurama, where the mother says, "I don't understand evolution. I'm going to keep my children from understanding it. I'm going to protect my children from understanding it."
Yeah, I never really got that vibe from them. They were never. They never felt like they had to protect anyone from it. It was more along the lines of, this is a thing. We need to talk about it and address it because it's wrong. That's more the vibe that I got. And that's, stuff that I got from a lot of the stuff that the elders and the preachers actually said at the congregation. So
I'm gonna have to start wrapping this up a little bit, as I usually try to keep my things down to 2 hours, and I don't know if Talking Shit Tuesday is going on today. That's by the way, that's a show that people do. Well, JD Kane does at usually on Tuesday, but he's supposed to be doing it today instead, and we kind of go on there and be panelists, and it's basically a make fun of show. So that's all it is. We make fun of stupid shit, but. I got some announcements to make, but I want to give you time to wrap this up and tell people, like I said, I asked you before, give them some advice on how to start thinking critically, and let know you're welcome anytime. We have regular hangouts, and now that you are familiarized with them, and after you join the Great Debate, which I give the link, you'll know when we're broadcasting. So
okay,
so I'm gonna give you the last word because you're my guest, and. There you go.
Okay. I guess the best advice that I have for people is to don't, if you were raised in a Christian home, come from a Christian background, don't believe everything that you're told just because you think that the person who told you that is honest or reputable or educated. Go investigate everything. That's what I did. That's what got me out of your creationism, was thinking for myself and doing my own research and, deciding to look into things for myself to see if they were correct. So, and read, be well read. I like to think that I'm well read within, a couple of fields, and I feel like that's helped. You have to at least know. You have to know the literature to be able to engage with it, and if you don't, then you are going to sort of be subject to what other people tell you.
And how research should that literature be? Because you had mentioned that before we went on air, and I think there's a brilliant thing to bring up about recent literature. And what do you say in your field? What do you consider to be recent?
Within the last 5 years.
5 years, people. 5 years. So when people are citing shit that's 40, 50 years old, they're so woefully out of date.
Yeah, I mean, within the last 5 years is what genuinely the standard within the STEM fields. So anything beyond that is outdated because of how fast STEM fields grow. It's not going to be the same for stuff like theology or biblical studies, although they have their own conferences and symposiums and workshops and stuff like that where they present papers and stuff.
Sure, but science is a lot more rigid, a lot more formalized, and science builds upon precept by precept, right? Science is awesome because it refines itself, self-correcting in that regard.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Kyle, I thank you so much for coming on. You're my first in this series of Recovering from Irrationality. I hope there's going to be many, many more guests. I have a couple more lined up.
Okay.
Just to let you know some announcements of future guests. I do have, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right because he's Italian, but I think it's Antoine Brett. He is a plasma physicist. He's an astrophysicist. He'll be coming on Tuesday at 8 a.m. It's going to be in the morning, yes. But he's going to be talking about C. Brown's claim of Z prints creating all the elements. I also have, let's see, who's what's the other guest I have lined up besides the big
Wait,
one?
Steve, is that 8 a.m. your time or East Coast?
Yeah, it's 8 a.m. Yeah, usually I put everything in Pacific Daylight Time, which is my time. I also have oh my goodness. Hang on, let me check the time on this. One sec. Okay. I do. This is going to go back a few years here. You guys may not know who this person is, but I have a guy named Brian Sapient. He's from the Rational Response Squad. If you guys remember way back when, the Rational Response Squad was the group, him and Kelly, I think O'Donnell or Connolly, I think her name was, that had a really popularized debate with Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron, and they destroyed them. Now, I don't agree with Brian on a lot, I just want to say a lot of things. I don't agree with Brian on everything. I mean, they do run some pretty bad arguments, like religion is a disease, mental disorder. I don't agree with that, obviously. But I want to see if he's kind of got away from that. He's been out of the community for like 6 years, and so I'm trying to bring him on and kind of see where they're at now with the Rational Response Squad. But any old timer in the YouTube is going to know the Rational Response Squad. So I have him booked for Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Does anybody remember?
Oh wait,
do you guys know what I'm talking about?
that would be 5 Eastern, right?
That would be 5 Eastern, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw those debates on YouTube.
Okay, so okay. And the big one actually is I have Creationist Cat's Human Worthless Slave, or Worthless Human Slave on tomorrow night. That's going to be Vadim Newquest. He's going to join us at the Great Debate Community at 8 o'clock. I'm sorry, 3 o'clock Pacific Time. And that's going to be a Patreon event for his channel, for subs and a few other things. But we're going to be talking about how AdSense has affected the community, and how there's been kind of a stifling of I can't say free speech, because on YouTube you don't have free speech because you're on their platform.
Thank you. Somebody finally realized it.
Yeah.
But there has been some kickback.
Say what they all say.
But there has been some kickback for people with controversial channels, and of course, Creationist Cat is a very controversial channel. So we're going to be discussing that. So if you guys, are Creationist Cat fans, join us tomorrow. So there's some of the bigger people that I have lined up, although there are other people in the works. But I think we're going to go check out to see if Talking Shit Tuesday is going to be going on. And I want to thank you all guys for the super chat. There's still plenty of time to donate via the super chat or PayPal if you really like the content. Again, a dollar here and there. I mean, you guys are really overly generous, and I do appreciate it, but it's not really required to be that overly generous. I mean, I'm happy with just a couple bucks here and there that people donate. So I thank you all for that very much. Anyways, I'm going to leave you guys with that. I want to thank the people coming in here, Thaddeus, Pseudo, Mithridates, and Hernando. Thank you very much, especially Kyle, my guest. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.